Emily's days had become a rhythm she no longer noticed. She woke up dressed in muted colors, walked to the office where she worked in data entry, and sat at her desk under the hum of fluorescent lights. Her life felt like gray noise, constant, quiet, and without color. She hadn't picked up a paintbrush in 5 years, not since the day her father passed. Back then, she was alive in a way she could barely remember now. Her father was her biggest supporter, the one who saw beauty in every canvas she touched. When he died suddenly, it was as if someone had pulled the sky down around her. She boxed up her brushes, left her unfinished portraits stacked in a closet, and started job hunting. Something about art felt too vulnerable, too painful. Like if she painted again, she'd have to remember everything she tried so hard to forget. Every morning, she passed Mr. Rhodes, the janitor, who had worked in the building longer than most of the employees had been alive. He was quiet, always humming some old tune under his breath, pushing his cart with the same steady pace. Most people overlooked him, but not Emily. Maybe it was the way his presence made things feel grounded, less hollow. One evening, when she stayed late catching up on reports, she found herself sitting beside him in the break room. He offered her a peppermint and pointed to the notepad she absent-mindedly doodled on. "You've got an artist's hand," he said, not looking up. She smiled politely. "Not anymore." He didn't argue, just nodded and looked out the window. Sometimes we put things away thinking they're too heavy to carry, but they were the only things that made us light. That night, she lay awake, those words echoing in the quiet of her apartment. She got up, walked to the hallway closet, and pulled down a dusty box. Inside were her old sketchbooks, pages once full of dreams and wild color, now yellowing with time. She ran her fingers over a pencil drawing of her father's hands, rough but warm, captured in such detail that it had felt like he might reach out of the page. She shut the book quickly and pushed the box back in. Her chest ached. She wasn't ready. Not yet. But the next morning, as she walked into work, something small shifted. She noticed the way the sunrise hit the windows of the office. She noticed how Mr. Rhodes always lined up the chairs in the conference room perfectly. She noticed color, soft, quiet color, in the world again. And she wondered, for the first time in years, if maybe there was still a part of her left to rediscover. Emily found herself seeking out Mr. Rhodes more often after that. Not intentionally at first, just small moments, refilling her coffee as he mopped the floor, sharing a quiet nod by the elevator, passing in the hallway. But he always seemed to have a sentence tucked in his pocket, something short and ordinary that lingered long after he walked away. One day, he mentioned he was retiring next month. 42 years, he said, tapping his broom like a cane. Time to rest these bones. Emily congratulated him, but the news left a strange hollowness in her chest. People came and went in that building all the time. Why did this feel like a loss? Later that week, she stayed late again, lost in spreadsheets. As she passed the break room, Mr. Rhodes was wiping the counters. She paused, something tugging at her. Do you want a gift? For your retirement? She asked awkwardly. He didn't turn around, just kept wiping. I've got everything I need, Miss Emily. She nodded and turned to leave. But, he added, if you ever decide to paint again, I wouldn't mind being the subject. She froze. He turned to her then. a soft smile beneath his salt and pepper mustache. Your father talked about your art a lot. You know that, don't you? Her stomach dropped. You knew my dad. Years back, we'd chat by the loading dock. He always carried a photo of one of your paintings. Said you'd paint the world one day. Emily didn't respond. Her throat tightened too fast. She managed to nod and walked out quickly, the hallway stretching longer than it should have. That night, she opened the box again. This time, she didn't stop at the first sketch. She turned pages, portraits of her dad, strangers at cafes, city streets, and laughing children, all frozen in charcoal and ink. She touched them like fragile things, afraid they might dissolve. She bought a new canvas the next day. It sat on her table untouched for 3 days. When she finally tried to paint, her hands shook. The lines came out wrong. Her vision was blurry. She wiped the canvas clean again and again, until finally, her frustration burst into tears. She sobbed, alone in her apartment, fists clenched, brush on the floor. Years of grief came pouring out, not just for her father, but for the part of herself she buried with him. But after the storm passed, she sat in silence and stared at the blank canvas, not with fear, but with surrender, and something like hope. Maybe she didn't need to paint the way she used to. Maybe it wasn't about perfection. Maybe it was about returning. The painting she eventually created wasn't what she expected. It wasn't polished. It wasn't bold. But it was honest. A quiet portrait of Mr. Rhodes standing by the office window, mop in hand, morning light casting long shadows behind him. She painted the stillness, the routine, the kindness he carried in his posture. But in the background, she added something no one else would notice. Her father's old scarf, hanging from a nearby chair, a silent thread between two men who had quietly shaped her life. The morning of the retirement party, she wrapped the canvas in brown paper and carried it to work with trembling hands. She nearly turned back twice before reaching the building, but when she saw Mr. Rhodes leaning against his cart, humming that same gentle tune, her feet kept moving forward. At the small ceremony in the break room, there were cupcakes and polite laughter, a speech from management. Then, it was Emily's turn. Her voice wavered. "I just wanted to give you something to remember us by," she said, placing the painting on the table. He pulled the paper back slowly. Silence fell. His eyes didn't leave the canvas for a long while. Then, softly, "You painted again?" She nodded, her heart racing. "Because of you." Mr. Rhodes blinked quickly, then smiled in that quiet way of his. "I think your father would be proud." Something in her cracked open. Relief, release, a warmth she hadn't felt in years. People began gathering around, offering kind words. Her co-workers, who never knew she painted, looked at her with a kind of curiosity and admiration she hadn't expected. Later that day, back at her desk, Emily opened a new browser tab and searched for local art meetups. Then, for the first time since college, she signed her name up for an open exhibit night. She didn't know what would come next. She didn't have a 5-year plan or a vision board, but she had her brushes out again. Her hands were stained with paint. Her nights were no longer quiet in the same empty way. Each evening she painted a little. Some days it flowed, others it didn't. But she kept going, and with each stroke, she felt like she was talking to her father again. Not in memory, but in movement, in creation. In courage, destiny, she realized, doesn't always arrive like thunder. Sometimes it enters quietly through the back door, wearing old shoes and a soft smile, sweeping the floor as it waits for you to notice. And when you finally open the door, all it takes is one decision to change everything. Sometimes we think we've missed our chance, that our moment to change has passed, or that we've buried too much of ourselves to ever come back. But life has a quiet way of waiting. It nudges us gently through people, memories, or even the echo of a lost passion. Emily's story reminds us that destiny doesn't vanish, it waits. And the smallest decision, taken with courage, can open a door we thought was locked forever. If this story touched you, share it with someone who might need that same reminder. Like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more stories from the tales we share.